Hello and welcome to the This Is Ibrox podcast. I'm your host, Ross Chalmers, and this is the Sunday session as we react to Philippe Clement being appointed the new Rangers manager. Tonight, I'm joined first of all by John Walker. John, how are you?
Yeah, not bad, mate, not bad.
Yeah, it's not too bad a Sunday. I didn't really expect an announcement this morning, I'll be honest. I thought it would maybe roll into the Monday, so it's got the day going well. We're also joined by Tommy. How are you, Tommy?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm good. Although I would say slight delay on my camera there, but no, it makes sense to go on the Sunday because if you get it out early enough, then it will dominate the Sunday, but it'll also dominate the Monday news cycle from a sports perspective. So I would imagine that's what the club are keen to do as well.
Smart move from them there. I didn't think of it that way, so you've beat me to that one. Just before we jump into things then, I've noticed actually we've got a new member to the YouTube channel, Ibrox 1872, so thanks very much for that. Really appreciate all the support. And thank you very much. So we'll just jump into things, guys. We've quite a lot to get through, actually. There was quite a lot that came out of it today, and probably the build-up to the announcement over the last week, there's been a lot spoken about, so I'm keen to get your thoughts on a lot of it. I'll just jump into some of the things that came out of the club today, and I'll get your opinion on it. The club obviously came out with a statement this morning. They said Rangers Football Club is today delighted to confirm the appointment of Philippe Clement as the club's new men's first-team manager. Clement, 49, arrived at Ibrox with a wealth of experience as a player and coach, as well as a track record of winning league titles, which is exactly, I think, what we all wanted to hear. Clement himself said, "I'm honoured to have been appointed as the new manager of Rangers Football Club, and I'd like to thank the board for giving me this opportunity. I'm hugely excited by this chance to achieve success with Europe's most iconic clubs across 4 competitions in what remains of this season and beyond." And John Bennett, he commented on it as well. He said, "Philippe proved to be the outstanding candidate across all the key criteria, reinforced by his track record of winning titles, and I wish him every success as he leads us forward." So, John, I'll come to you first then. Just give me your kind of initial reaction to the appointment. You know, is he the man for you? Because it's worth asking that now. You know, was he the outstanding candidate for you? I know you like the look of Kevin Muscat. Did you come around to the idea of Philippe Clement being appointed as Rangers manager?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I think between the two of them, I was quite happy. I think I put out a tweet pretty early on that I had received from some fairly decent journalists telling me that the real list was had Frank Lampard in it, which we all seen, Pascal Janssen, Dean Wilder, and Kevin Muscat, and I was like, Jesus Christ, if this is the pickings we're going with, then yes, I'm going to do my digging on Kevin Muscat. And everything I've seen from Kevin Muscat, from A-League to J-League, pretty much comfortable. The only blip was that period in Belgium. When Philippe Clement came onto the scene, that was the one I was pretty happy about. Whenever I do my Scots Abroad page, whenever I'd spoke to Jack Hendry about him at Club Brugge, he said he was unbelievable. And Jack Hendry was comparing him as above Brendan Rodgers, which is now ironic because we've now going to have that direct comparison in Scottish football, and just said how detailed a coach he was, how good the football was, how good the training was, and how aggressive attacking opposition was, which is all the things as a Rangers fan you want to hear for the new manager. But that's all well and good doing that anywhere else. Rangers is a different beast. Rangers is a unique beast. We are a difficult job. Doesn't matter what experience you have. We all remember the excitement of Paul Le Guen coming in to what that turned out to be. It's just a different animal being Rangers manager.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. What's interesting on the appointment of the Rangers manager is I seen quite a lot today from Monaco fans, and a lot of the Monaco fans were not complimentary about Philippe Clement. So I think it's good to get both sides of this. Of course, you've heard there yourself, John, and Jack Hendry speaking so positively about him, but there's also aspects of the Monaco support that weren't too enamoured by him. But that is football. Ultimately, sometimes you're going to succeed, sometimes you're going to fail, and people will have a different perception of you. Tommy, what's your thoughts on the appointment then? I believe you were on the podcast last Sunday. You had a wee chat about it then. Kind of who was up for, who were the candidates for the job. What's your thoughts on it? Correct appointment for you?
Well, I think he's of the names that were on the short list, and it got to the point of final interview, etc. I think he's got what the club were looking for, which was trophies over the course of a season, got experience of winning, done it more than once, so it's not just an aberration. I mean, I think I don't want to walk past that Monaco point. I mean, 73 games, 37 wins, 15 draws, 21 losses with a relatively young Monaco side. And that's how he was prepped to the Monaco fans as well. listen, you're coming into a bit of a young Monaco side. It's up and coming. I think they were 9th when he took over. He left them at 3rd. I'm not saying it went massively well. I'm just saying there's a little bit of context there. I mean, his record at Bruges, Genk, and even Vassland as well was pretty reasonable. But yeah, listen, he's got trophies in the bag. He's done it, importantly, at more than one club, albeit in the same league. He would love to have a manager who's won in different places before they enter another league in another country. And that's probably my only not concern so much, but just a little bit of a question mark. It's fine to win it 3 times in Belgium. What do you do outside of Belgium as well? Although I think he had the strongest CV. The club were very, very diligent, as we've seen, in terms of going back and forward, really getting invasive, making sure that they had spoken to, or rather the candidates had spoken to people who'd been at the club as well and were socialised that way to understand the pressure. Maybe one of the important things for the Rangers support generally, people watching and listening here and ourselves, is if you listen to his interview in RTV as well, he makes it very clear it doesn't happen overnight. So he's already well aware of what's happened to previous managers. He's already well aware of what happens at Ibrox and with the support. Yes, expectation goes right through the roof again. We've been hurt before, but we're happy to get into bed again, right? So to speak. Right? I'm not mandating that, but he's already saying, listen, give it a moment. It's one of those. It's a bit of a wider answer, and I'm sure we'll come to it. But it's one of the problems with doing this mid-cycle. Or it's not mid-cycle, right? It's October, but this manager's going to have to come in and get the best out of a previous manager's flops, right? Give him time, let him see what he can do. The club can't go through reset after reset. We do have to kind of pitch our tent, and I think he was just trying to get that out front and centre. This is what I do. I want to be front and forward-facing football. I want to be possession-based. I can change my tactics, etc. And my philosophy. I want to build from the back line. I want to play with a bit of risk, but can you just give me a moment to actually get in the doors and work with the players that I think I've got at the moment?
Yeah, you've made a lot of good points there, Tommy. I think you referenced the Rangers TV interview as well. That's something I've specifically got noted down for us to speak about, because I think there was a lot of interesting comments in there from him. I think a lot what the fans wanted to hear, so we'll definitely dive deep into that. There's a few comments here worth reading out. John Weir was the pick of the bunch for me, onwards and upwards. We also have a comment from Scott Hammond. This is a chosen man, so we need to get behind him. Just hope he gets us back to the winning ways and attractive attacking football. He's got a frustrated, tough crowd to deal with. Not an easy gig. Sorry, yeah, you're certainly right there. RSA72, from the names, he was the best option. And Paul McGarrigle as well. I think it was a great decision to get Souness involved in helping the board. And that's something I wanted to come on to next, Tommy, so I'm going to stick with you on this one. Do you think the board deserve a bit of credit here for how decisive this process has been? I mean, removing Michael Beale, I was going to say as quickly as they did, but maybe they were forced into it, I suppose, but they were quite decisive there. Looks like they've really taken their time with this process. They've assessed numerous candidates while leaning on kind of Rangers' experience with Graham Souness. Do the board deserve credit here for this appointment?
They do, in my opinion. Yes, people will say they should have moved after the Old Firm game with Michael Beale. I can understand that particular challenge. Those same people, I imagine, would say they want a board that's going to stick by their man. We've just referenced the fact that the manager's saying, you need to give me a little bit of time. I don't think it was naturally the time thing that undid Michael Beale. It was the fact that he couldn't see a definable style of play, and his signings have by and large been flops. I think those two things in combination are what done him over. The board gave it as long as they could, and the club internally still believed that the season's salvageable. That's why they've moved so quickly. They're not writing that off from the conversations we've had. So, yeah, I think they've moved as quickly as they could. They've been as diligent as they could be. They've been as decisive. They've got a good candidate list. They've picked a good candidate from that. I think the socialisation with people like Graham Souness, but also people who have been in the club like Thomas Buffel and stuff like that as well, has more than anything else set the manager up, set Philippe Clement up to not just be from an outsider's perspective, where he references things like, yes, an iconic stadium and I've seen it and it's always good to have the noise and all that. Right, no, you've listened to people who have come in from your country and who have been part of that when it's going well and part of it when it's not going well. You should be under no illusions what the expectations are. And sometimes the expectations are wildly out of kilter with reality, right? We're all like that, we're football fans. So, no, I think it's been a really positive move as these wee bits leak out about what the process looks like. it's rounded. And I think that's what we've been crying out for. We don't want people who've just been PowerPoint managers. We don't want people hired off the back of one conversation over a curry, so to speak. This sounds like a proper process that's been overseen properly. And now we hope we've got absolutely the right man.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of criticism surrounding that, Tommy, when it came to the Michael Beale appointment. I think a lot of fans felt that there maybe wasn't enough done there in the background to really assess whether Michael Beale was the best candidate. We all knew the Rangers experience they had, and of course that is important for any manager coming in if they've got some sort of idea of the club, right? Whether that's the experience themselves or they've spoke to people like Philippe Clement has. But I just really like the way this process has went. It sounds really thorough. The frustrations from the fans were around maybe Thursday, Friday this week that why are we not hearing anything? But I took that as a positive, really, to be honest with you. I want the club to really assess their options and get the best man. There's a good comment from Tam McMahon here, actually, if I could bring it up. If my mouse will... Right, I'm going to have to come back to that. I'll bring it up in a minute, right? My mouse has just completely died there. But we'll just jump on to the Rangers TV interview. John, I'll get your thoughts on this. From some interesting comments there. He said it was a sporting choice. So he referenced the potential of the club, the passion of the fans, and Tommy referenced it there. He said he spoke to Thomas Buffel about the club. Well known, I think, now that he turned down an approach from Saudi, which I think is crazy, to be honest with you, when you're offered those sums of money to be able to turn that down and maybe make a move for the, like he said, the sporting project. Does that encourage you that, you know, the profile manager that we're getting in Philippe Clement, he has other opportunities, you know, really high financial opportunities, and he's choosing to come to Rangers? Does that give you encouragement?
I think it's a hard one. I think he was a profile enough manager that would have made interest in the Saudi club that were approaching him, but also Saudi League is taking Fashion Sakala, and he's their star player in that team. So that's not as a disrespectful thing. It's just as the measurement and scale. Yes, there is a Steven Gerrard over there. Yes, Neymar's over there. Ronaldo's over there. But there are other teams trying to start out and find their feet. I think if the team that were approaching him was the team that were actually approaching him, it's not a big choice for me between that and Rangers. Yes, the money would have been greater, but we do undermine this because it's in Scotland and it is in our nature. But when Rangers and Celtic, annoyingly, I feel like I should caveat that, when our clubs are big in Europe, we are massive clubs. We are massive pools for a manager, that, especially a manager that's had a tough time. Look at somebody even with Brendan Rodgers' credentials is having to come back up to Scotland again to try and repair his career again because of how much he's flopped in the previous role. That's what's happened with Clement, and I think that was the only thing I preferenced Muscat over, was Muscat had his blip in Belgium and then went to the J-League and started winning again. Clement has the hangover of having a bad spell, and we've seen what happened to Paul Le Guen coming to Rangers out his depth and trying to go back to France. He just never recovered from it. Clement does seem... I'm always a big one. One of the things I really liked about Postecoglou was his character. He seemed very stern, very straight with the media. He wasn't going to take any shit. I feel the same way with Clement. He's a very straight talker. I'm guilty of telling people not to get too caught up in what the media press conference sounds like in people, but I did like the way he spoke. And from having watched some of Belgian football due to following players abroad, he has changed them with the team and players that he's had available to him when he's been in those squads and in those positions, because in Belgium, he had players being sold, and in Monaco, he had a whole new team that had been built, and he was very adaptable to putting the players in the place he wanted them. And that's what I really liked, is it'll be round pegs and round holes, and the formation won't be something he wants. It'll be the formation that suits the players we've got. The only thing a wee bit alarming to that is one of the formations he did settle on in Monaco was a really narrow 2-2-2. Asking for a lot of width from his fullbacks, and from looking at some of the comments and the more stable-minded, will we say, Monaco fans, that was a big criticism, was that they didn't have the fullbacks getting up the park. And when I read those comments, I just started having PTSD for everything we've just went through for the last 8 weeks.
Yeah, I think that's something that actually gave me a bit of the fear as well. I read some of the analytical pieces on Clement's time at Monaco, and that was something that was said, that he looked for a lot of width from his fullbacks. And yeah, we have seen Michael Beale try to do that, and it's not really worked for him at the moment in terms of the fullbacks we have. So you've picked on something there in terms of his adaptability. It's something I'll definitely come back to in the podcast, and we'll have a wee chat about what we expect to see from his style of play. But I know that's something that a lot of people have said about him. So that's really encouraging, and I think you need that. You definitely need that when it comes to SPFL football. You're going to be playing against low blocks every single week. Then you go to Europe, you're going to have to change completely. It's encouraging for me personally right now that you've got someone in there that can clearly adapt. Tommy, I'll come to you in the rest of the Rangers TV interview then. This was the bit that I think as a fan you love to hear. He said that the team needs confidence and a new dynamic. Thought that was quite interesting. Referenced the atmosphere at Ibrox, and he missed that at his previous club, which again, really interesting to hear that's something he really thrives on, and he didn't get that in Monaco. His mentality is to win. He knows what it takes to win. It's not easy, and it's about hard work. He's just a winner, and he wants to win trophies. When you listen to that today, what did you make of those comments? Is that exactly what you want to hear? Is it maybe just this is what you say in interviews when you first take a job? How did you respond to that?
It's exactly that latter point. It's boilerplate stuff. I am definitely not getting overly excited by somebody who says, "Oh, the people who I've just signed for are the." I'm really delighted. You'd expect nothing less. I mean, I'm sure he means it. I don't want to be overly glib, but yeah, listen. I know that there's a good reputation with Ibrox when it's bouncing and stuff like that, and people do and are aware of that in the professional game abroad, etc. Right? John particularly well placed for that for the people he speaks to. The club are delighted with Philippe Clement. Philippe and his team are delighted to be here. Now it's just a case of moving off that, right? Because that's soundbite stuff. We've done that with Michael Beale. We've done it with Joe Van Bronckhorst. We did it with everybody. Just start to get on the training pitch and start to build that new dynamic and that level of confidence that he's already identified. What I liked was he'd already watched all the matches for the season over the last few days. He's identified things that need tweaked. Actually, really interestingly, he also said he'd identified things that were working well. It's not baby in bathwater here. There are elements to our side that are pretty good in terms of the style of play. Some of the things we do, it just hasn't all knitted together. So, yeah, I mean, it's always nice to hear somebody coming in, particularly from a foreign league, and saying, right, this is the greatest place to be. It's a hell of a lot better place to be if you're winning. So that's maybe the important part of the story there. You win, we'll be right beside you. You'll find this is the best part of your career that you'll ever have, right? And it'll be a club and a fan base that you'll remember for the rest of your life if you keep winning, right? Other than that, you might have been better taking the Al Shabaab offer in Saudi, which I think rumours were 15 million or something like that over 2.5 seasons. Listen, it's always good, but let's get down to the real stuff, which is his first moment in the dugout and what he does with the team, and what big calls he makes right off the bat.
Yeah, and I think he's got a lot of big decisions to make with that Rangers squad at the moment, doesn't he? There's a lot of underperforming players, and it'll be interesting to see who he takes out and who he puts in, and I think he'll look to shake things up, definitely. John, just before we move on from that then, what's your thoughts on the comments around it? I thought it was interesting because you listen to most managers now when they take a job, they do tend to speak about their playing style quite a bit. Now, he did reference it. He said it was, all about scoring goals, interchanging positions. He spoke about it, but for him, it was more the mentality. It was all about winning. That's why he's here. What did you make of those comments? Are you in Tommy's camp where you're not really too bothered about it, or do you think that's really important?
No, it doesn't really bother me. I think one of the things that happened near the end of Beale's era was that he actually started picking up wins, and it was the win against Motherwell that was the one where I was like, hands out, I'm done. I can't watch this anymore. The win isn't the short-term fix for me. As long as it was like the Gerrard thing. Gerrard failed in 8 out of 9 trophies that we needed him to win, but you could see bit by bit there was a process happening. The football and style of play was there. It was actually growing. It was coming to fruition. You knew once we got it right, there was potential for an unbeaten season, irrespective of what you want to shout about COVID nonsense and that. That was growing. The dominance over Celtic was growing there, and it all just came to fruition in one big season. And it was carrying on into the next when he left. It was all there. I think as long as Rangers fans can see that the football's good, it's attacking, you can sometimes bear a season of disappointment. But when they both tend to go hand in hand, you need to get out there as quick as possible, man. That stadium, like from going Europa League to Beale Ending, that stadium can be a horrible place very quickly. It can be heaven or hell. There's no in between sometimes. And he just looks, it's hard. I don't like saying things like that because it's very generic. But he looks like somebody who'll carry himself well. He's already lost all his hair. That's a good thing coming into this job. He can't go. He can't get any worse.
But you mean he can't tear it out?
Yeah, spot on. I think you made a good point there, John, in terms of when you were watching the Motherwell game, and even though the Rangers got the win that day under Michael Beale, I think a lot of the fan base, completely turned that day. And something I always say about Rangers in terms of when you're watching them is you just need something to buy into, just something. It doesn't necessarily always have to be the team are playing scintillating football. It could be that you just have faith in this manager and you believe in what he's trying to do. I just think that was completely gone under Michael Beale. Steven Gerrard had it for a long time. Even when the team weren't playing well, the fans really bought into him as a manager. So I think that's something that we really, really need back. I think the fans have to maybe be realistic, and I'm saying this about myself. Maybe that attractive football, interchanging positions won't come necessarily very, very quickly. But if there's something that we can see.
Sorry, Ross, I think you're right there, but
yeah.
There was also, particularly with Steven Gerrard, there was a personality factor.
Yes, important.
Steven Gerrard came out, like him or not, when he came on to speak about football, you knew that it wasn't just concept. I've drafted this up on my power pad, and it looks great from a keeping the ball in the house and moving it box to box type of thing. He had done it at every single level and had the trophies in the background to prove, most of the trophies in the background to prove it. So you could buy into that part of it. I'm not walking past you and John's well-made points of, you could actually see it iterate on the pitch as well, even in the bad moments. You could say, right, okay, you know what he's trying to get to. But the Gerrard stuff as well came at a moment where we were all fixated on one particular trophy. And he was somebody you could buy into from that personality perspective. Michael Beale didn't naturally have that, although he had the massive goodwill of the fan base and the board. I think Philippe Clement comes into a slightly different area, which is we're looking for somebody who's professional first. And by that, I mean, gets back to the basics, starts to show that the players are getting better and doesn't talk about that beautiful concept stuff and playing the great football. Now, I'm in the exact same place as you and John. I think you do need to have that wider fix. But I think in this particular set of circumstances, most people are just looking for what can Philippe Clement change immediately to show what his style is going to look like, and that he's willing to make some of the big calls about either new players or legacy players who haven't been performing as well before he starts to do the bigger stuff, as John's referenced there, which is start to get this team delivering wins in a way that we can all buy into, as opposed to the Motherwell game and stuff like that.
Well, you've taken me on to my next point really well there, Tommy, so thanks very much. I think
always happy to help. Always
well,
happy
there
to help.
There you go. I think his experience here is something that we should probably have a chat about. I think you said there in terms of what can he do coming in now to make a difference, right? What changes can he make? That his experience so far, he has went into clubs that have maybe not been doing so well, and he's managed to get things going for them. Then in the next season, when you've seen him at Genk or Club Brugge, they've really went on, they've kicked on, they've won league titles. I'll just give a bit of background on him. Really good job at Beveren. I think it was his first job. Well, he came out of Club Brugge. I think he was a scout there, or he was working behind the scenes. He moved there. I think he was only there for around 6 months, and then he moved to Genk. His first full season there, he won the league with Genk. I don't think they'd won it for 8 years before that, so that's a fantastic accolade already in his short managerial career. He moved to Club Brugge after that. I think he won the league twice in a row there. 3 back-to-back Belgian titles is certainly something to be proud of at that stage of his career. And then obviously, like we said before, he's moved on to Monaco after that. Managed to get a 3rd place finish in his first season. 2nd season, he lost kind of big stars to Tchouaméni to Real Madrid, Badiashile to Chelsea. That experience then, I'll stick with you here, Tommy, that experience of being able to go into these clubs and make a difference quickly. Now, we always think for a Rangers appointment, we've seen historically Rangers appointment, right? We've not had many that it is about the long term. I understand modern football's slightly changed, right? And managerial stints are shorter now. But how important is it that he makes an impact quickly here and just gets this team back playing some level of just decent football, or even trying to get these players to a level where you can start to believe in them again and they have confidence? How important is that?
I think it's a key deliverable, in all honesty, for both well, for us, the fan base, for the club, and for himself as well. I'm going to walk past that Club Brugge thing, by the way, and just stick with calling them Bruges, right? Because my Duolingo isn't working on TII tonight. You know, I'll always try and pull people up when they get overly fancy with that. But no, I think you're absolutely spot on, Ross, with the question. And it's one of the problems with the cycle that I was referencing, actually, which is much like Michael Beale had to come in after Giovanni van Bronckhorst. And then it's, right, he gets half a season or a bit of a season or the majority of a season, whatever, right? Now Clement has to do it with Michael Beale's signings and players. So the fan base are always caught a little bit recently, which is, oh, is that him? Is that the legacy players and the flops? Do we give him another window or another window? Somebody said to me on social media today, he needs 3 windows. And you think, well, okay, right, and I'm not entirely sure I buy into that, right? But at what point do we get comfortable that it's him and you see it? And that's why I'm saying he has to do something with this team to at least get them to a level. I think most people will say we're not expecting Cyril Dessers to hit 30 goals this season, right? If he manages that, right, okay, we might carry him up and down Edmiston Drive, but he's caught in that cycle as well of, right, I need to show the fan base, I need to get the best out of this squad, because ultimately I want to sell some of them on for a reasonable fee as well and get my own players in. The board need to buy into that. What have they signed up to in terms of investment as well as part of that conversation? So it's always unfair, I think, to some extent, on a manager coming in like that. But the upside is this team can't get any lower in terms of confidence or performance in the eyes of the support. So unless he gets them playing, you know, Kashinya 2 at the back and leaking goals left, right and centre, he should be able to get a better tune out of them, which means that people will give him a bit more of a support. Just don't want to walk past your point about his history as well. Again, maybe one thing that I keeping an eye on is I think if I average that out, his average at a club is probably just over a year. So what does that start to look like when you sign a 3.5-year deal? Because this will be the first time that he's expected to see longer than a year. And I'm not saying that's a negative thing. He's won 3 titles, but actually, if you just average it out there, he's only ever been, including Monaco, I don't think I'm far off. Just over a year.
Probably just over a year, I think. Yeah.
Okay. It's not a great length of time in a fishbowl, being constantly scrutinised and then having to do it from day one when they aren't your players. So a little bit of pressure on Clement as well, but he obviously feels that him and his backroom staff can work with that, and I'm fully confident that they can.
Yeah, John, what are your thoughts on Philippe Clement's experience then? Tommy's made a lot of good points there. Do you think it was a really important aspect and maybe why the board have went down this route? But I think we can all agree that Michael Beale was a bit of a project appointment. I think you knew that you weren't getting a manager that had basically all the necessary experience behind him, but they were willing to give him the opportunity in the role. Do you think that the board have now taken a step back, assessed it differently, and his experience is really something that's maybe won him the race?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the safest experience appointment we've made since Walter Smith came back. I think with trophies in the bag, recent trophies in the bag, with a good playing experience, which I don't always like to reference, but when you've had a decent level of playing experience, you've played in the Champions League, you've won titles as a player, it gives you that different aspect because you probably know what to look for in leaders in the changing room. And that's not a captaincy debate. We can do that another day. But what a good core leadership groups look like that can build around a title. And I agree with Tommy, but see that 2-year cycle, that's all I want. And I think that's as good as we're going to get in Scotland now, because see the more successful, Postecoglou's just made English football look easier than Scottish football because they had a nightmare start up here and he's breezing it in England. See the more our managers are successful. Like Rodgers went to Leicester and was successful until they started tightening the purse strings. Gerrard, I think, took the wrong job at the wrong time. Postecoglou is going to be successful at Tottenham. Whatever success for Tottenham is, it can be. But I would be looking at my managers to have a Brendan Rodgers, Neil Lennon 1.5 years, and Postecoglou 2 years, where our managers are coming in for 2 years and picking up 4 and 5 trophies and moving on to a better job. I'm all right if that's the cycle, but the problem is the cycle's been happening at the other side of the city just now, and it needs to change. It just needs to change. So I actually, on paper, him or Muscat was the safest, most experienced appointment we'd made since Walter Smith came back. And that says a lot about...
No, I was going to say, I agree with you, John. Listen, I'd be delighted if people are coming and chapping on our door to say, we want your manager and here's a compensation fee and your players, etc. Because there's a bucket of silverware, that's sitting here. I do absolutely agree with that. And it's about time. The only thing I'd maybe say, so I throw the challenge back to you and to Ross and the watchers as well, is no, I don't think Giovanni Van Bronckhorst was a poor appointment. I mean, he had a decent enough background there. I don't think I'd put him in the same Michael Beale list.
I'd agree with that. I don't have him. There is different levels of what I would put in there, but Van Bronckhorst had a Feyenoord squad that was falling apart again after he'd won the league. He hadn't done the consistent thing. Caixinha had done it in other countries. I just think if McCoy's took over, it was a disaster. Warburton didn't quite have the experience. This feels like the safest hands on it. Gerrard was a gamble, paid off eventually. Beale was a gamble. Van Bronckhorst was a gamble, but looked good on paper and was the choice we wanted. I think, not to go back too far, but I think the thing I do like is there was at least 2 or 3 standouts in this CV list that we had when we seen Pascal Janssen, Knutsen, Clement and Muscat. It felt good to actually be like, oh, there's a few choices I'd be quite excited to see, and not just be like, it has to be Beale, it has to be Van Bronckhorst, and that was the way I felt before.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
And I think that's the refreshing thing, is it felt like there was the right people were interviewed. I think Muscat's probably been done out of favour because he's not been over here to talk to them face to face. It's obviously been done through different telecommunications, but I think it just feels like a safe pair of hands for once, and I hope that's the way it is.
My understanding, though, as well, is I think that some of the candidates like Kevin Muscat, who was out in Asia, actually there was board members who were able to have direct conversations out there as well, because that's where they're located. But I get your point, John. It's a fairly well made one in terms of that background, and maybe you've got a point there.
Wonder if that's something we just have to accept as fans moving forward, that the managers will be here for a shorter term, but ultimately if they bring you success, then that's what we just have to accept now. They're going to be here for shorter stints. And we're right on the doorstep of the Premier League, and if you do well up here, they will come and take you, regardless if it's a manager or it's a player, and that's just something we have to deal with. And ultimately, I think as Rangers fans, you'll accept it, won't you? You will accept it if you're bringing home trophies every single year. That's exactly what you want, and you just have to accept.
I'll take a manager that signs a 2-year lease on a house up at Loch Lomond instead of buying, right? But he brings his own silver polish. That's how confident he is, right? I'll take that guy. That's my type of manager.
Yeah, I think we would all agree with you. I think it's just something that takes a wee while to come round to, especially with Rangers, just because there's not been a lot of permanent managers. I know that's changing over the last few years, but I think it's just something that it'll take a bit of time for the fans to come round to. But ultimately, we haven't been as successful as we'd like to be over the last couple of years, and if we can get back to that, fans will accept the inevitable. So, yeah, I'm really excited about the appointment. Let's talk a wee bit about his playing style. I'll come to you on this one, John. We touched on it in brief stages earlier. There hasn't been I don't think there's been a great amount of talk around his tactical approach. I think there was a lot when it came to Kevin Muscat. I think you done a thread yourself on Twitter, kind of detailing Muscat's approach. I've not seen as much about Clement. Heard certain things with Monaco, favours a 4-4-2, things like that. But mainly it's about, I've read in numerous places that he will adapt to his squad, really. He will play a system that fits his squad, which, me personally, I love that in a manager. I really do. I really would rather a manager that assesses the squad he has and he plays that suits it. And I think that's maybe what let Michael Beale down in the end. And obviously, again, he adapts to the opposition. What do you expect to see from a Philippe Clement Rangers side, John? Maybe short term and then maybe long term. What are you expecting to see? Some sort of patterns? What is it?
I reckon against Hibs you're going to see a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-1-2. Just with looking at his second year at Bruges, he really favoured that. He had 3 good defenders because they brought Jack Henry in from Ostend, so they had 3 really good centre halves. To be fair, not had great wing backs, but he wanted to get them up high. I think if anyone's looking at our team, we look fragile at the back. Our best attacking option is our right back, who needs to get further up the pitch, knowing they can leave space behind him. You can do that with Goldson, Suter and Davies as a back three. You can still have your two sitters in there comfortable. You can have Barisic on the other side, and you get Sima and Roof, Sima and Dessers, Seamers and Danilo if he should be back now. Whoever it may be, get two strikers. That's what he done for Bruges, and get balls into the box for him. There was obviously something that happened that he liked from Bruges going to Monaco, whether it was the fact he still had two top strikers, and Ben Yedder, and the other player's name is failing me right now. He obviously liked something from going from Bruges to Monaco, where he said, I really like having two strikers up there. He played football early 2000s and the late 90s all the way through when it was old school 4-4-2. I don't think he's going to come into that Rangers team and see a 4-4-2 formation working, because we do not have the width that can get up and down that line. We do not have the fullbacks that can go up and down that line anymore. I think 3-5-2 against the Hibs, who play 4-4-2 just now under Neil Montgomery, you deal with the two people up against you and you'll be able to exploit them. As for the way they play, it will be inviting a press. He'll try and use the free to invite two wide players and two attackers to press them and play around them, and really he'll favour one side. I would imagine it will obviously be Taverniers. He'll favour one side to get down and get high on and get the number 10 and the two strikers in the box and get crosses into the box for them. If that fails, it will be dropping to a 4-3-3, what we're more used to. But our only question is who goes in which positions to fulfil that just now, because even the limited amount of wingers that we don't have anymore. Like, I'm just seeing updates from the Romania game and seeing Hadji score and set up a goal, and you're just like, okay, if you wanted a number 10 that was available.
Yeah, I think we've all been like that with Hadji recently. We've probably thought, I'm not really sure why we've let him go, but we won't go into that right now. Tommy, what are your thoughts on the style? Maybe what you'd like to see from the Philippe Clement. That took me a while there. Rangers side.
You don't know how pleased I am to see you trip over that, by the way.
I don't know how I tripped up that one, to be honest with you. I've said it so many times today, that's probably what it is.
You're about a week away from Big Phil. That's what you're
that's very true, actually. That's very true. We've actually sat at games before, Tommy. We spoke about the strength of our centre backs. We really like the profile in there. John Suter, Ben Davies, Connor Goldson. I know he gets a lot of stick at the moment, right? But he is a good centre back. I've always felt that we probably have the profile in those three to play a back three, but do we have the depth? That's the thing that I always think about. If one of them comes out, do we really have enough to go in? Leon Balogun, I'm not sure. Leon King can't really get a sniff. Do you agree with John that you expect to see a back three? Is it a back three what you'd like to see? Does it make sense for the squad for you?
I think John's nailed that. Yeah, and it's exactly what he did at Genk and Bruges, and then tried to replicate to some extent at Monaco as well. He does like to draw people on and then try and exploit space behind. I think in terms of playing the three, yeah, we maybe do have a little bit of a depth problem, but then you look to our youth players, you look to Dujon Sterling as well. You realise you're mid-October, you've got a chance to maybe bring somebody in the winter window as well to kind of force that area. I think what will be quite interesting as well is what he does with slightly deeper line midfielders, maybe a Cifuentes or a Jack or a Lundstrom. Does he just ask them to fill in when we're being attacked and keep the fullbacks even higher to see if they're an outlet? It did a little bit of that, if I recall correctly, at Monaco. It didn't quite translate, so he might stay away from that. But no, I think we will see the 3-5-2. I think Rangers are set up actually to do that quite well. Michael Beale spoke about that in press conferences, ones that we attended, if I remember correctly, that he was saying, keep your eyes out for us going to three at the back. I definitely think he wanted to transition to that type of setup and then draw teams on a little bit, which is something we don't always get in Scotland, and then try and exploit, space in behind them with any sort of contact. But I think that's how we'll set up, right? And he'll play with a little bit of risk in that environment and say, well, listen, I think we can get the top end of the park. The problem that he will run into is, who does he base his confidence on at the top end of the park? Because you can play with risk and you can go with three and you can push your fullbacks really, really high and really wide, right? And say, I can live with the gaps, right? That's fine. I mean, Jurgen Klopp, for an example, with Trent Alexander-Arnold, I'll live with the gap because I get more going forward and I think we can outscore teams anyway. Who's going to stick that in the back of the net for us? Because you look at that forward line and you go, well, Cantwell's injured, Hadji's, not here, Lawrence coming back. Lammer's not hitting the net. Roof, we just don't know. Dessers, feel for the guy. And you start to say, right, well, where am I going to base my confidence on? His immediate piece of work isn't so much that tactical switch, in my opinion. It's the confidence and mentality stuff at the top end of the park to get people to start taking chances.
Well, I'll stick with you then, Tommy, because he does have a really good record, actually, a good track record of developing players. I think there's plenty throughout his time in Belgium that he's developed and went on to really good levels. Can you see him really making a change here when it comes to the old guard? We've spoke about there the fullbacks high in terms of Barisic and Tavernier, but can you see him really? Can you see him changing those fullbacks? Can you see him playing a Ridvan and a Dujon Sterling? Can you see him pulling a Connor Goldson out and going with a John Suter, a Ben Davies, and Leon King? Can you see him making these big changes that, let's be honest, a lot of the fans are crying out for at the moment, aren't they? They're wanting to see big changes in that 11. Do you expect him to do that?
I think there'll be some changes. I will be absolutely stunned if James Tavernier isn't a nailed-on starter, given that he is the biggest attacking threat and he plays directly into that style that we've just spoken about there. So, yeah, whether that's the long-term fix is a different question. But right now, if he's walking in, he's going, right, I've got a full-back who plays high, makes the odd mistake at the back, but also gets goals and sets things up and gets the ball in. I think I'm probably going to stick with that. The left side is where he's probably got the choice. Do you go with the Barisic and ask him to sit high and whip it in? Or do you go with Ridvan, who's more of a ball carrier and is still to develop his kind of crossing ability? I think he might end up going with the latter, to be honest with you. Whether Sterling's part of that conversation more from a depth of the fullback, depth of the centre-back, more important. But yeah, I mean, I think he'll make choices that. The problem is, if you actually look about the squad, even after the investment, the personnel are maybe not that dissimilar. So what you're just saying is, right, I can't really immediately transform the way we play. We can make it, move the ball quicker, be a little bit more rigid in the shape, understand more about what we're doing at the top end of the pitch. Things that Michael Beale was trying as well. And, not saying he wasn't, but there's only so much that he can change immediately, because you're still staring, for example, at a midfield that's Ryan Jack, Lundstrom, Cifuentes, Cantwell, Raskin, Lawrence, with Cantwell and Raskin, and Lawrence if you drop them slightly deeper. Then you look wide and you go, right, Scott Wright, Hadji, if we recall him, although I'm not entirely sure there is a recall clause in there, but happy to be wrong. Then you go, right, I've got Sima, I've got Dessers, I've got Lammers, these types of things. I've got Matondo. There's not a hell of a lot of changeable options there. We've all been watching it since the start of the season, so he's going to have to get the very best out of players that we know haven't been performing, which is why I come back to you can tweak all the things from a training perspective. The fundamental problems have been mentality, responsibility, accountability on the ball, and belief. That's what he has to come in and work on, and that's why I think in the RTV interview, immediately, he was talking about mentality and confidence and a new dynamic, because that's what he can change immediately.
Yeah, John, I'll ask you the same question because I'm curious to get your thoughts on it then. The big players on this side, do you view it as that Philippe Clement's going to come in, he's going to rip it up and he's going to take these guys out? Or is everyone just a clean slate? Whatever you do for me going forward is what matters. I'm going to let go of what's in the past. I'm going to let go of the fan perception. It's now up to you guys to prove why you should be in the team. And he gives everyone a clean slate. Is that the way you expect it to be?
Football clubs are a duck on water. We as fans see very little of what actually happens. James Tavernier's a shite captain. Connor Goldson isn't doing his job. There's no way people can be happy with that. Old managers wouldn't stand for it. Umpteen managers can't be wrong about Connor Goldson and James Tavernier. Yes, there are weaknesses. There's a reason they're stuck at Rangers and not being picked up with the English Premier League. Somebody with James Tavernier's numbers, if they were any better at defending, they'd be playing for Liverpool. They wouldn't be playing for us after the years they've had. It's that simple. We need to accept that's where we're at. I don't think there'll be any change. It'd be interesting to know who he's talking about, because I don't know if there's maybe video of Dessers, Danilo that he's watched from previous game, because you're going to look at Dessers and Danilo and go, how were they successful in Holland? And look, Danilo doesn't look lost, right? He just was unlucky with his injury. I don't know, sometimes, see managers with a good eye, they can sometimes spot somebody's body language just being different from when they're flying, from when they're not, when it's not as obvious. There's no way we have signed Dessers and done our due diligence and it's as bad as what we've seen and decided to sign. It's just not possible. As simple as we want to make it in our group chats, it's not as simple as he's terrible. He would not have been at the club he was at, and he would not have moved to the club he's at now if he was terrible. It's just one of those ones where I'm like, is there a goal? Does he get a goal and he's a different player? Is that something that happens with somebody like him? Is it a new voice he needed? Could he hear the fans right away and was like, this isn't any good? Or leaving Dessers on in that old firm, I don't know how damaging that is to a human being. I could imagine it was like 1,000 people groaning that another striker was taken off to leave me on the pitch. Never mind 50,000 people. Almost, you could hear every single person in that stadium going, no chance. That could demolish somebody. So maybe there's a wee element of him might get a new lease of life. Be like, right, cool, he's out the door now. I'm away from him. Got a new manager to impress. It's a clean slate. I think that might be what happens, and that might be the confidence that we'll see change with a few players. People like Tavernier, I don't see that as a problem. I don't think Tavernier cares whether people love him or hate him. I think he just focuses on being as good as a Rangers captain as he can be. I just like the back three because I do think it protects Goldson on that side. I think changing his partner consistently, keep saying this, during the unbeaten season, you could name the starting 11. You could name the two flanks, you could name the two centre-halves, you could name the three midfielders. It didn't change. Consistency is the key. Our injuries are killing that. The minute we get to the bottom of that problem, everything changes. I don't know how we get to the bottom of that problem because it seems like a consistent issue, but just getting that comfortable. If it isn't getting Tavernier a partner, it's getting him up the pitch as a wing-back and getting somebody in the box. We're lucky, I think, actually, can't believe I'm saying this, in the fact that Sima has been the one person in that changing room that can hold his head up. He's been the one player that I think's been consistently brilliant. So he has to start. So to me, it's like a natural, him and Danilo up top, and we try and go for it now. And I hope that's the kind of, I hope he's one that we stick with, because I think he's earned that. I just think the confidence thing is key. You need big balls to play in front of 50,000 groaning people, especially when you get into winter months. It's only going to get colder and get more snarkier from us.
I get gutted when a Sky won it at 11s in front of two trees and a dog, right? But never mind groaning by 50,000. But listen, I think John makes a good point there, Ryan. Whilst I'd maybe say Seaman's been good, maybe not brilliant, but he's not ours, and he will go back to Brighton. I think maybe the wider question for the Philippe Clement era and the club isn't so much about Tav right now, because Tav will start and Tav will maintain, and he'll probably maintain being captain and all that as well, in my opinion, right? Like I said, I don't think he'll change that necessarily. It's what are the club going to do to have a succession plan when it comes to James Tavernier, because that's not currently nailed down. So the conversation is, it's fine in terms of, right, will he start? Yeah, fine, but with Barisic on the other side, you're having a conversation of Barisic or Ridvan. That's clubs like ours need to keep, every club needs to keep turning people over. The fact of the matter is, we've relied a lot on James Tavernier, and he has went to the well for us over and over again. His stats and his longevity is fine, but at some point we need to be able to start to introduce competition. We've not naturally done that. Patterson was allowed to leave, etc. So that's the wider conversation over Philippe Clement's 3.5 years or however long he's here as well. What does that next stage look like for this team's evolution?
And I think that's the beauty of a new manager, isn't it? Sorry, John, sorry to cut you off. I think that's the beauty of it, and the clean slate. Like, everyone will be pushing each other again. Everyone's coming in this with a fresh approach of, I can get that shirt. I was lucky enough to be at the training centre that day when Dujon Sterling was being interviewed when he first arrived, and he was very bold that day. He was basically making it clear he wasn't here to sit on the bench. He was here to play. Now, he wasn't necessarily saying he was here to play as a right back, but he was saying, I'm here to play. I don't have any fear. And I think we've not seen enough of Dujon Sterling yet to really push James Tavernier on. Maybe Michael Beale just didn't feel he was able to integrate him into the side when they were playing so poorly. But I think you made a good point there. We need every position being able to push each other. I think we've seen that on the left side with Barisic and Ridvan. Barisic has been arguably the most consistent player this season, and I think that's because he's got Ridvan right behind him. And I think he'll probably know the fan perception is that, well, a lot of fans would like to see Ridvan being given a chance, and he's out there every week trying to show that why he's playing. So I think that's a really good aspect for us to follow. John, I know you were wanting to jump in there.
No, I was just going to pretty much agree with Tommy and say something we talked about with the cycle of managers and the cycle of players. It's one of the downsides of having a player that's been there for 7-8 years is we were unlucky that Patterson came along. If Patterson had came along 2 years later, you would have had the successor for pushing James Tavernier out. It was just timing that we got this wonderful young right back appearing when James Tavernier was hitting his absolute peak. Ideally, James Tavernier would have been a 3-year purchase down for England, got his numbers and moved on, and Patterson would have taken his position. And in 3 years' time, we would have hopefully found another Nathan Patterson and so on. But it's just, as it continually seems like, you just talked about Barisic's best performances since Ridvan started being there. His best season for Rangers was when Bassey had joined for Leicester and was behind him, waiting to take that spot whenever it was available to him. So maybe Barisic is somebody that just needs that fire up his ass a little bit to push him and say, you might not be in this team if you don't perform. And I think that's maybe a mentality that we sometimes forget, because I'm always one that takes a piss at him a lot and says that he does seem to get injured an awful lot when the team's struggling. His hamstring does tend to go. But then there was other times when he was doing interviews and he seemed like an absolute mental case. Like, he seemed like his mentality was totally switched on for what a Rangers player would need. So I think maybe sometimes perception of people, and I'm guilty of it, is incorrect. And maybe Barisic will be one that gets on with a manager that's described himself the way he has, and it'll be the right thing to push him on him. He started twice for Croatia during this international break as well, which will be good for us.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. Just lastly, then we'll have a wee chat about the expectations. We'll maybe leave the long-term expectations. I think that will come in future podcasts. But we'll just talk about the short term. We'll talk about this season, what we want to see from Clement's Rangers side. Tommy, I'll come to you first. What are the expectations for this season? 7 points behind the league. Scottish Cup still available to come. League Cup semi-final. Group stage Europa League. I know that was a difficult defeat last week in Limassol, but it's all there to play for. What are your expectations for the season? What's the minimum you have to see from this Rangers team?
Oh, you asked me to put my colours to the mast there straight away. I like
it's exactly why I'm asking.
Yeah, I like why you phrased that question there. Well, as I said, internally in the club, having spoken to them over the last few days, and externally in the fan base as well, although I'm really interested on if anybody in the comments wants to disagree with this point, everything's still there. Everything's still there. 7 points is not insurmountable. We've still got, that opening day win in Europa as well. So there's a chance to look to progress. You've got the Scottish Cup, but probably more importantly, you've got that League Cup. Philippe Clement has an opportunity to get a trophy in the bin really early. And that's probably the difference, or this could be the difference between him and other managers who've come in. If he can get that win early, that solves a lot of your problems when it comes to the group's confidence. It solves a lot of the problems that you've got with the fan base not quite being as energetic and connected with some of these players as possible. We can actually start to build something. So I have the exact same thoughts at this point of the season as I did at the start, which is we go to win everything. 7's not insurmountable. We're still in both of them, and we've won 1 out of 2 in the Europa League. If he can get the best out of this squad, then get them in the I see blue bills are blue comments. I'll say get them in the blue bin bag and get the silverware back to the trophy room that it deserves to be in. So yeah, no discounting on where we should be. Everything's still to get there, and he's got a chance to maybe tweak things personnel wise when it comes to the winter window as well. I think he's in a relatively good place.
John, what are your thoughts then? Minimum expectations. Just a couple of comments before you come in. John Moffat here saying the League Cup and the Scottish Cup. Nicola saying win the League Cup. Paul McGarrigle saying the league and then see what happens in Europe. What are your thoughts on this? What's the minimum expectations for you for this season?
European football after Christmas, irrespective of which trophy that is, because I think third place still takes you into the conference. If we dropped into the conference, that's a totally different conversation, because that's a European trophy we could go far in. The League Cup and the Scottish Cup, the Alex McLeish first 6 months, that's what you need. You need to regain control over Celtic, get 2 trophies in the bag, so that you can build your pre-season on the emphasis that you are better than Celtic. You came in to a league title. If we lose that league by 3 points, 4 points, he can still say, in my time, I outdone Celtic and what I had to do in front of me. I've won both trophies that were available to me as well. I pushed Rangers into Europe after Christmas, so I'm now signing people on the premise that I have Celtic's number, I have Brendan Rodgers' number. We're coming in to win the treble. For me, it's that short term. Those 2 trophies and closing the gap on Celtic. I think it's actually difficult. I don't like to disagree. The title's so far away. In Scotland, 7 points is difficult to claw back. even this early on, especially with Old Firm. I mean, Celtic maybe didn't drop 7 points in the last 10 months, so it's hard to claw that back, but I would like to see us push them to less than 7 points, whatever that may be. But those two trophies need to be in Ibrox. That League Cup and Scottish Cup need to be back.
Can't believe you've given up on the league already, John. I am
shocked.
That's the only bit we're clipping for the social media.
Yeah, he's bang on as well, by the way, John. You'll be on Twitter tomorrow. No, I think, just from my point of view, the League Cup's very important. We're already in the semi-final there, and I think we all said before Michael Beale was removed that he had to win that trophy, and he probably wouldn't have been given a lot of credit for winning it. That's just the way the fan perception was at that point. It was very much, it was mandatory. He had to win it, and I think that is the same for Clement. And I have a little bit of anxiety around this because I look at it in the short term, and I think, well, okay, he's came into a difficult situation. Of course, he should go and win these trophies. How realistically, how many can he do? But I remember saying exactly the same thing about Michael Beale last season, and they had to come in and get these trophies. Ultimately, he didn't get them, and he's out of a job. So I think short term is actually really, really important for this season. I really think he has to make an impact quickly. Clement, what do you think, Tommy?
I think you're right. I also think, going back to John as well, because I don't want to be overly glib, right? I get exactly the league point. I know 7 points in Scotland's a hell of a lot, right? But everything's still to play for, and there's a long way to go, which is why I'm sitting there. Actually, if you boil it down to what we're all saying, right, and it's maybe the unpalatable part, right? But one trophy, because it's so different from what we've been doing. Like, you know, if Philippe Clement can show that he can win a big game, that's going to be different from what Michael Beale was unfortunately doing. You know, not only that, but the style of performance and play. Michael Beale, and I don't want to keep referencing him, but he's the last incumbent of the chair, you know, which led to Clement coming in. Not only did he not win the big games, but he seemed slightly at odds with himself when it came to some of those. I'm buying Cantwell and Raskin. I'll only buy players who start. Then I don't start them in the biggest game. Then I change some of my tactics. Then I don't really understand where I'm going. These were the things that unnerved the fan base and decoupled us from the level of confidence that we'd had in Michael Beale when he first came in the door. And so that's what you're just looking for as well. And it sounds really, really basic and really boring, but you're looking for consistency with somebody as well. Here's my statement. This is what I did. Did it lead to a positive outcome? The positive outcome being that trophy. If we can start to see that for the manager and the management team, the players can start to see that. They get confidence. We get confidence from the stands, the whole club and the whole fan base move forward together to what should be a better place. Actually, you know, that's not great, sexy commentary, but it's exactly what you need to do. You need to get it stable, get it consistent, win something, start to say, right, we can actually start to grow as a club and a team together. And that's how you build that winning mentality. It's not as easy just turning up and going, right, everybody sing a song, and that's you all initiated, and that's it, we're all bonded now, right? It doesn't quite work with that. Back to John's duck on water point. That's the work. I'm boring and I keep coming back to it, right? But it's the mentality part. If we can get that first trophy, everything gets unlocked, because then you say we can actually do something. And that's what this team's missing. I think they don't believe that they can do anything, and it's just been negativity after negativity. But that's been created a lot by themselves.
Yeah, look, I agree with a lot of your points there. I think the mentality aspect is really, really important. And if you can find that, and if you can find it early, I think he will be successful here. I'll just be honest about it. I think because we've had this conversation so recently, and I remember how I was feeling when Michael Beale came in, and I remember thinking how important those trophies were. I'm starting to put more emphasis on them now, but maybe I should just take a step back, give Philippe Clement his chance, let him come in, make an impact, and yeah, let's hope he's very, very, very successful. I think that's a great place to leave it, actually. That I'm really inspired by that last answer, Tommy. Thanks very much. That was good. I enjoyed that.
I don't even charge. Much like this is Ibrox, we don't charge for this content. There you go. I just realised though that much like I was having a go at John, I'm pretty sure I just said, "Oh, I'm really boring there," and I know you guys are just going to clip that one bit. And I'm going to be staring at that in the group WhatsApp over and over again. So, aye, right, brilliant. I'm looking forward to that.
Well, I definitely won't be clipping the part about me not being able to pronounce Philippe Clement. Well, I'll leave that. I'll let everyone just enjoy that in the
full
full
surely
podcast.
Rugen's the one that we should.
It's the correct pronunciation. That's all. Just making sure I get that right. That's it. But anyway, that's us tonight. And before we go, just want to give a huge congratulations to the Rangers women team. They won 7-0 today at Ibrox against Hibs. Really good result for them. 4 goals for Kirsty Howitt again, and they're only 2 points off the top of the table now, still unbeaten. So really, really good season, really good campaign for the Rangers women team. And let's hope that the men's team can replicate that this weekend coming against Hibs at Ibrox. Remember, everyone, find us on all the social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can follow, subscribe to the podcast on any podcast platforms. If you've missed the podcast live, you can catch us up there. And if you don't enjoy YouTube, you can listen to us there. And yeah, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. It really, really helps us out. It means we can keep doing this. And all I need to do is thank the guests. John, thanks for your time. Appreciate it on this Sunday.
No, welcome.
And Tommy, thanks for your time. Good to have you.
Oh, you're lucky.
Perfect way to end it, isn't it? But yeah, thanks everyone for getting involved. And remember, leave a comment, give us your thoughts on Philippe Clement on the video. I think it's really important to hear from everyone on this, and let's hope he's a really, really successful Rangers manager. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.